Gia Sandhu, welcome to An Actor Despairs. How are you doing?
Thanks. I'm doing really, really well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's awesome to have you on the show. I love the work that you're doing. And I just got the chance to watch the Mysterious Benedict Society prepping for this, and it's a really kind of quirky, cool Wes Anderson show. It's awesome to be a part of that, and I first discovered you in the Girlfriend Experience because I'm a big Paul Sparks fan. And yeah, it's awesome all the work you're doing and all the training you've been able to do. I mean, two conservatories, or one was at the Film Center and then the other was the Theater School of Canada, right?
Yeah, that's right. The theater
Yeah.
school was first and then the film center.
But that's amazing. And I'm so excited to talk to you about everything that you've done and all that's to come because it's just getting started for you. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up mostly in Toronto, and a little bit in India. My family is from India.
Got it.
And so I went back there when I was about 6, and I was there for about a year and a half. And then
Wow.
came back to Toronto again. So mostly Toronto.
Do you remember that? Like that
Oh
experience of going,
yeah.
oh wow.
I guess because of the stark contrast between what it is to grow up in North America versus a place like India,
Yeah.
it was really jarring initially going there and trying to settle and make friends and understand the system there.
Yeah.
I mean, just the education system is so different. I mean, being in kindergarten here, where you're like hand painting and playing with colors and like doing fun stuff like that, versus kindergarten in India, where we're learning multiplication tables already.
Oh, really?
Just by rote.
That's why you
Yeah.
guys are so much smarter than us.
I have no idea what I'm saying, but I know I'm doing
Yeah,
2 times 2 is
yeah,
4 and
yeah.
continuing that repetition there. So it was actually really difficult. The more difficult thing was actually coming back from India back to Canada, because
Losing
I
your
guess I
friends again,
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it's a funny thing that happens when you're a kid. You just assimilate so quickly
yeah,
that you can kind of forget the previous chapter, even though I
yeah.
knew Canada was all I knew before I left. But then coming back, I felt like a complete foreigner all over again. And in India, for example, all the kids go to school, with oil in their hair, with their hair braided very, very neatly,
Wow.
in a school uniform. And so really, really put together all the time versus coming back to Canada and my mom being like, oh, like, why don't you wear, something more colorful or playful? And me being like, no, I want my oil in my hair and my
Yeah.
braids, and I want my
Oh,
socks coming over my leggings. And I was like a total nerd and like totally picked on and made fun of it. And I for it. And I couldn't understand why.
oh man, I'm so sorry, but I love that. That's so beautiful. Talk to me if you don't mind me asking, what did your parents do?
So my mom works for the city of Toronto, and my dad works for a publishing company. But interestingly, both of them are actually very creative people, but don't work in creative
Okay,
careers.
so I was gonna say, so they're not artists, but he's kind of artist adjacent.
Yeah, yeah. My
Yeah.
dad, he was an English major and a huge lover of Shakespeare and poetry, and so our home growing up, we just had all these amazing books lying around that I could pick up at a young age, and my mom also very creative. She designed kids fashion clothes in India for a little while.
Wow.
Yeah, she had a sweet little fashion line, and just very into aesthetics. She
Yeah.
loves decor, loves putting colors together and furniture pieces together and all of that stuff. So definitely has a very creative flair and eye.
That's so beautiful. So they are pretty much artists in a lot of ways. I'm curious
Yeah,
then,
definitely.
did they instill, reading upon you? Like how did this art thing start to happen for you?
Yeah, so I guess because my dad was so focused on the literary arts when I was growing up, I had a natural inclination towards moving in that direction, and thought that might be a good career choice for me.
Yeah.
And so I thought initially that I would become a writer, or maybe a fictional writer or a poet or a journalist of some sort. And so that was kind of my motivation throughout school, was to do really, really well in my English courses, and I did that. And so acting, I suppose, kind of came around for me later on in high school, where I did really well in school, probably because of those early years in India.
Yeah.
um,
You already knew algebra in 7th. Yeah.
So academia was something that I fell into really, really easily. And I think acting I found to be challenging. It was something that I couldn't understand
Yeah.
and cerebrally couldn't understand, no matter how much, I came about it from an academic approach. It was confusing to me and it was interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I think that curiosity really spiraled me in that direction,
I
that
think that
challenge.
to be curious is the best thing you can be as an actor. And I'm curious, obviously you were doing a lot of reading, but did you have a lot of like good cinema experiences growing up?
So my parents, they weren't into the independent cinema scene that I've grown to love so much.
Yeah.
We kind of watched all of the big blockbuster films when I was growing up. So there was the Disney, which I'm working for now, which is
Yeah.
fun, and the action films, the Spider-Mans and the Batmans, and that world.
And forgive me because I really just don't know. Is there a theater scene in Toronto?
Yeah, there definitely is a theater scene here. I mean, it's not like in New York or anything like that, but
Yeah.
we have some great theater houses here, and they do wonderful work.
That's beautiful. So when you were in high school, you started at the drama program there in high school?
Exactly. I started in the drama program there.
And
Yeah.
how soon along did you feel the bug? Like, ooh, I like this.
It was, I didn't necessarily know that I liked it. I guess there was one performance. I had never even performed in a play in its entirety. We were doing scene studies, and the rest of the school was invited to watch our scene studies. And I had this one little bit where I had to cry on stage, and I was probably like 16 at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember afterwards the kids coming up and they were like, "Oh my God, how did you cry? How did you do that?" And I was like, "Oh, this feels quite glorious." So I think there was a bit of like, "Ooh, this is fun. I want
Yeah.
to do more of this, whatever
Yeah.
this is." So that was kind of the shift in high school. But even when I went on to theater school, to be honest, I wasn't sure. I went into that training program at the National Theater School, and I went in going, "I'm going to try this. I don't know what this really is,
Was that a
but
big
let's
concern
see."
for your parents, like, to not go to a proper college and to go right into a theater school, or were they supportive of that?
They were really, really supportive. They were
Oh, that's
really
so
supportive.
beautiful.
Yeah. I think my dad definitely was concerned, as any parent would be,
Yeah.
that especially, being an Indian person and not seeing people that look like me on TV, not seeing people.
Representation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for him, he was a bit nervous about it. He definitely tried in subtle ways to tell me that I should have a backup plan. But overall, very, very supportive. Yeah.
And I'm curious, just because you do have, I imagine you have both passports for India then, or
India, Canada, and England. Yeah. Yeah.
wow. So were you ever thinking about like Bollywood? Was that ever on your mind, or no?
You know what? It's definitely come to my mind.
Yeah.
I think for most Indian actors who grew up in North America or in Europe, I think you definitely do think, hey, there's not as much work here as there would be for me. If I was
Yeah.
somewhere where the color of my skin wasn't a factor at all.
Totally.
And so yeah, that's definitely crossed my mind. And I think now the work that's coming out of India is probably more in line with the type of stuff that I like to do. There's a great independent scene coming out of there.
Yeah, it's amazing
Um,
stuff.
yeah, they're just
Yeah.
like internationally, they're right on par with the rest of the world, and they're doing incredible work there.
That's so beautiful. So talk to me about your experience at theater school because it can go one or two ways because you're so young and you're learning this thing, and conservatory, they tend to make you or break you to make you. And how was your experience there?
Exactly that. Exactly
Yeah.
what you're describing. It
Yeah.
is the whole, break a person down and then try to build them up to be, the ultimate Shakespearean actor.
Yeah.
And I think so. I definitely did go through that at a young age. And the first two, so it was a 3-year program, and the first 2 years were very much typical theater school, elongating your vowels, trying to find your voice at the center, of your
Yeah.
diaphragm, all of that stuff. And we were, rolling around being babies and all that stuff. And I went, "Oh my gosh, I
I
don't
know.
want
I
to
did the
do
same.
this. Oh my goodness."
We
I
had to
think
do,
all of us go through that.
yeah.
We're just like, what is this? Why are
Yeah,
we doing
clowning
this?
and Commedia dell'arte. It's cool,
Yeah.
but it's not that
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
Yeah.
All those classes.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was finally in the third year of theater school where we were being treated, quote unquote, like professional actors, not getting
Yeah.
paid, of course, but everything else was professional about it.
And
And
every year doing a show?
every year doing a show, but I mean, the first 2 years, you're really only performing in front of your peers,
Got it.
the kids in the other years. But third year, they were actually selling tickets, and you know, our class did really really well. We did cabaret, we did a play called Lilium, we did another play called Women Beware Women,
Wow.
and I think that was the year when I was finally being treated as a professional. And I think having my own independence
Yeah.
in that world made me feel like, yeah, this is incredible. I love doing this, especially getting responses from audiences that you don't know, you know, who
Yeah.
come in and they cry with you and they laugh with you and they go on this journey with you. I think that really sealed it for me.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible. And did they have a showcase built in for that third year?
Yeah, they did. They had a
Wow.
showcase. Yeah, yeah.
And how did that talk to me about that? How did that go?
It was, you know, we for our showcase, I think we had to do Shakespeare and something
Classical,
contemporary.
contemporary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was nerve wracking. I mean, we were doing it in front of, you know, all the industry people, the casting agents, and just the acting agents that come in, and it was nerve wracking. It was really really scary, and I don't think that I chose the right pieces for me at all.
Yeah, I don't
And I
think
went
anyone
out of there.
does.
I
Yeah,
went out of
yeah.
there being like, I don't know, whatever. It
And
happened.
was it Canadian reps or American reps as well?
It was mostly Canadian.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at this point, you know, obviously now there's so much filming in Vancouver, Toronto. I don't know if much happens in Montreal anymore, but early on there was a big push. You know, a lot of American productions. Was there at that time when you were?
I think when I first started, yes, and then it kind of went through a slump
Got it.
for a while, and now, oh my goodness, it's really really come back
Yeah.
big time. Vancouver and Toronto are so busy. I was shooting out in Vancouver for most of last year, and the crews there were saying that they actually just don't have enough people for
I've
all the
heard
shows that want to
that.
come over.
Yeah, like apparently every CW show shoots there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
CW
crazy.
is big in Vancouver.
Well, you know, I mean, talk to me, you know, because I spoke to you off air, you know, breaking down the Canadian landscape versus the American. You know, in America, it's very much, you know, Atlanta's kind of changed things a bit now, but it's always been kind of binary. You go to LA or you stay in New York. I say stay because I live in New York. But you know, for Canadians, is it Toronto or Vancouver?
I think so. It's Toronto, Vancouver, or if you're French speaking, then Montreal.
Got it.
And you know, I guess Canada, we don't really have our own star system, really.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, a lot of actors end up just moving over to the States and you know, trying to develop more of a, I guess, a satisfying career there for themselves.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is in Quebec, they actually do have their own star system. And so I think the French speakers in Canada kind of um, I guess have a different system that they're kind of
Wow.
able to work through and, you know, achieve their goals through. Whereas for the rest of us, usually, yeah, we end up moving off to the States.
Yeah, and so was that something that like ever interested you? Because obviously I know there's like visa concerns. Like, were you like, I want to do it in Toronto and we'll start here and I'll figure it out, or was there, you know, a pretty strategic plan in place?
I definitely wanted to stay in Toronto in the beginning and, you know, kind of, I suppose, pay my dues
Yeah,
is the way to describe it, and get as much experience as I could here. Probably make all of my mistakes here
yeah, yeah, totally. I
before
get
I
it.
headed off to the States. And then, yeah, and then eventually I did end up with American Reps, and I booked a pilot there a few years ago and ended up getting my visa through that.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it worked out pretty well, and yeah, I have a wonderful team there, and it all works really really well between the American work and the Canadian work.
And pretty soon out of drum school, you booked the Moth Diaries, right?
Yeah, that was right out of school. It was right
How
out
did
of
that
school.
feel to go from like, you know, just being in your final year, but only being able to perform in front of people and then booking something so radical?
Well, you know what? So I did only book that a few months out of school, but all of my friends in my class were booking theater gigs prior to me getting that film. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like the last one left in my class and I'm not
Yeah.
getting anything. And then boom, this incredible director, Mary Herron, came with this
Yeah.
film. And
Mary's great.
she's fantastic. I actually went into that as a reader to go and audition all the other people that were coming in. My
So
agent
you
kind of
did
sent
get
me,
rep. Sorry to interrupt. You did get
yeah,
rep from your school.
from my school. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Awesome.
yeah. So my agent ended up sending me over to the casting directors and saying, hey, can she read, just to get some experience in the room.
Yeah.
And then at some point they said, hey, Gia, can you leave the room? And I was like, oh boy. And so I left for a good 5 minutes, and they called me back in and they said, hey, would you like to audition for the role of Kiki? And of course I was like, yes.
Yeah.
So did that, then, went through the callback process and ended up getting that opportunity.
And how was that going, from being on the stage to like finally pretty soon booking, your first screen appearance? Was that awesome?
It was an incredible feeling, and it's funny because you're so young and you're so green and you're so enthusiastic,
Yeah.
and you want to take everything that you learned in all of those theater school classes when you're rolling around like babies, and you want to apply it to film.
Yeah.
And so there I was, I guess, kind of applying every technique that I knew. I was sitting there verbing all my lines and doing the whole thing, being a great student. um, and so it's interesting. So I guess the trajectory has kind of been, finding my own kind of what's natural to me, my own
Yeah.
thought process and vibe. But then it was just very, very strategic and very regimented the way that I looked at the work.
That's so beautiful. And that did that one get into a film festival? It did, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that did Venice and it did TIFF.
And did that open you up to the kind of international market a bit? Did some at least auditions come your way from being exposed at such prestigious film festivals?
I wish I could say yes,
Yeah.
but you know what? I think actually my agent had warned me back then. He's like, you're kind of starting at a high. He's like, this is probably not
Yeah.
how it's always going to be.
Right.
And then, boy, did I experience that truth. It
Yeah.
was, I had this film and I was like, oh, great. I'm going to go and try to buy a condo.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
And
keep working. Yeah.
and then I was like, uh-oh, reality check, didn't work, it didn't work consistently for a long time.
Wow.
It took me a number of years to finally find my groove and finally, I guess have the faith that, yes, the next thing will come along. But for a long time, that wasn't the case.
What buoyed you during that time? How did you stay sane and focused and determined?
I guess it's kind of the typical actor response where you go, I thought about all the other things that I could do, and there
Yeah.
was nothing that I really wanted to do more than this.
Yeah. So did you have to do the hospitality grind, or were you able to kind of find some other way
Oh,
of?
yeah. I've
Yeah.
worked every odd job you can imagine. I've done telemarketing, coffee shop,
Wow.
clothing stores. What else have I done? Yeah, restaurants, bartending, a whole cell phone store. I mean,
Wow.
a whole bunch
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
I did a lot.
And were you, at least while doing these, still auditioning, for things?
I was auditioning, yeah. And then I think it was around 2015, I moved to London for 6 months because I just
Wow.
kind of wanted to, escape the world here and go and see London, because I'd gone to on a trip to Europe just before that, and I fell in love with Europe and I was like, I
Yeah.
have to be here. So I moved for 6 months, and just before I moved, I kind of had this chat with myself and I said, okay, this is it. No more gigs,
Yeah.
no more side gigs. And went there, had a wonderful time, came back, and I think somehow that conversation with myself translated into reality, and I didn't have to pick up a side gig again. uh,
Wow. Were you
up until now.
working,
You never know what's going to happen.
working in London, acting wise, or you were just living life?
I was just living life.
Yeah, you need that sometimes. I did something similar, so that's amazing. And while you
Yeah,
were there, were you seeing like West End productions and, keeping that creative, ball fulfilled?
yeah, I think I saw a couple of plays. I didn't watch too much while I was there. It was expensive and I was like pretty,
Yeah.
the broke actor.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of my I guess a lot of what I was there, I was traveling a lot throughout Europe. I was kind of
Oh, okay.
there
So that was
to
just a home
really,
base.
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
home base. I was mostly in London, but it was definitely, it was a trip that was necessary to, I suppose, it's this. It's when I think when you come out of theater school, you have this idea that you have to always be available
Yeah.
because you never know when an audition is going to come up.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I was doing that. Like my mom would be like, "Hey, do you want to go, for a long weekend, just a little bit north of the city?" And I was like, "I can't do that. I have to be
Yeah.
available for an audition that's probably not going to come."
Totally. Yeah.
Um, so
It is crazy as actors what we put ourselves through through this like impossible, what if?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I think eventually I just kind of went, actually, I want to live a whole life. And I
Yeah.
think that's benefited me in every single aspect of my life, is making that decision.
And when you came back, that that resolve was just undeterred to like I'm booking work and getting auditions. Talk to me about the landscape of what were you auditioning for? Because in the U.S. we have so many crime procedurals and like what's the Canadian film and television market like? At least what were you going out for?
I mean, a lot of that, definitely a
Yeah,
lot of that. Especially as an Indian person, I think we got pigeonholed really
yeah,
easily. So there were a lot of procedural type roles that were made available to us. So a lot of nurses, victim in an ER, secretary roles, like
yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. Definitely a lot of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And was that tough for you? Because like I know it can be, I have a friend who's also an Indian actor and they always want him to do the accent or, be the convenience store guy. And I think he's just exhausted of it. Was that tough or obviously you're incredibly beautiful inside and out, were you able to not have to like do the sort of racist thing that they have people do sometimes to fulfill stereotypes?
I think when I think when you enter the industry, you certainly don't enter it thinking, I'm going to have to go through all of the challenges that I see other
Yeah,
people going through. We all
totally.
think we're very special.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think I guess I realized quickly that that was happening to me, and those were the types of roles available. And anytime there was a glimpse of a role that felt like something more than that, I would just get so excited, and
Yeah.
I would put so much work into the audition. I would just want it so badly because it came about so rarely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there was a big reckoning that had to happen around all of that. And luckily now things have changed so much. I remember when
Yeah.
I was like 12, 13 years old, and I would watch TV with my mom, and if I was watching or she was watching and one of us was not in the room, if somebody Indian came on, like just even in the background or had one line, anything like that, we would yell across the house, be like, "Oh my God, come here right now. There's somebody Indian on
Wow.
the screen."
Yeah.
And, so that was what I grew up with, was just, there was
Such
nobody.
limited. Yeah.
There was
If
nobody. And now that's changed so much. Now we don't do that anymore, which, I guess is telling of where we are now versus
yeah,
when we were.
thankfully, I'm so glad, and talk to me about the Canadian Film Center. When did the impetus to go back to school come?
Um, so the CFC was I think I mean there it came at a time when I felt like I wanted to get back into really studying the craft, and I think I wanted to be around a group of actors again,
Yeah.
in that sort of a setting, because I know that in theater school we had wonderful teachers, but I learned the most from my peers, who were all mega talented actors, and I think we all benefited so much from taking from each other's strengths and learning from each other's weaknesses, and creating also a real sense of safety. Like there are some of my closest friends even now.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a big sense of wanting to feel community as well. And the CFC is a great place for that. And, alongside the acting program, they have a directing program and a writing program and a producing program. And so you really get
The conjunction of all of those.
exactly,
Yeah.
and get to work on these wonderful little mini projects. And I think it was a really rewarding program.
Wow. Is that correct me if I'm saying the title wrong? People Boys is that where that came from or?
So that I think I had shot just before this going into the
Got
CFC,
it.
but
Because
it was coming out while I was at the CFC.
it's so beautifully unapologetic Indian, and it's just awesome. And that must have been so cool to be a part of that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Deepa Mehta is just such an iconic director and somebody that I
Yeah.
really, really looked forward to working with. So it was definitely a dream come true, just getting the opportunity to work with her.
And then that got into Toronto, so you were like hometown hero, you know?
Yeah, that was such a
Yeah.
fun festival to do, with a
Yeah.
Canadian
I hear it's the
director.
best one now. I hear it's better than Sundance, and like that's the one to go to.
I've never been to Sundance, but
Me
yeah,
either,
TIFF
but
is
yeah,
fun.
yeah. That's awesome. That's so beautiful. And so when that film came out, you were there, and some schools I know actors don't always adhere to it, and I've certainly not when I was at NYU, but they have a no audition policy while you were there. Were you auditioning still, or were you?
I was auditioning.
Yeah.
I ended up booking a film while I was at school. So I had to take some time off of the program to go to India and shoot this film.
How was
Um,
that? So you went back again, and
so I
this
went
time
back
with a
again.
job. How was that?
It was great. We were working in this little place called Hampi, and Hampi kind of looks like Jurassic Park. It's a big rock climbing destination, so
Wow.
massive boulders, and it's ancient looking, really and
Yeah.
truly. And so we were shooting this little place, and there aren't any big hotels or anything like that. So the dwellings are really, really humble, like kind of like I would describe them as like little shacks almost.
Wow.
And so all the crew was staying there and all the cast was staying there. And so it was really, it's as independent as a film can get, like
Yeah.
really shoestring budget, trying to make a film that, is funny and quirky and it just is in the most beautiful setting.
And was that an awesome experience?
It was a tremendous experience. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. And then when you came back to CFC, were you at this point with these incredible credits you have, were you shopping to American reps?
Um, I think it was a little while after that, after the CFC, that I ended up, meeting up with American representation.
That's awesome. And did that really open up a lot more audition doors for you, you
It
know?
did. Definitely it did. It was the right move. And I think it comes, it has to kind of come at the right time.
Yeah,
And luckily for me, I think that was the right time. I kind of had, I did all the training that I wanted to do. I had, enough experience in Canada that I felt, because I think it comes from within, like I felt
totally.
from within that I was ready, I suppose.
And did you move states or you stayed in Toronto?
I continue to live in Toronto,
Yeah.
and yeah, I come and I visit and I spend a couple of months in LA and go back and forth.
For like pilot season and
Yeah,
things like, oh, that's awesome. I love that.
exactly.
That's the way to do it. And now you almost don't even have to with self tapes anymore, you know?
Isn't it great?
Yeah, and like callbacks resume. You know
I
what I
love
mean?
it. I love it.
That's awesome. And so then, what do you feel like for you was the project that started getting you on American radars for like casting and allowed for something like the Mysterious Benedict Society to happen?
I suppose it was the job that gave me my visa initially, which was it was a reboot of The Greatest American Hero.
Yeah.
And yeah, so but it was about an Indian family. That was the twist on it, and so that was the project. It was with Fox, and it was my first time working on a lot in
Wow.
LA, and it was just it was really
In
exciting.
Culver City on the Fox lot?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It was really exciting to do that because I mean, it doesn't look like that in Canada.
Yeah, totally. And every actor dreams of like, being on the soundstage doing a studio film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's incredible. That's so rad. I love that for you. And then, while you were having these, like, having all this incredible theater training, did you ever do any theater again in Canada after training at drama school?
So right out of school, I took my one woman show and I performed that, and then
Talk
that
to me
was it.
about that. We can't gloss over that. When did you write this?
So we were writing it. They were all projects that we were doing when we were in
Sorry,
school.
who's we?
Oh, sorry, at the National Theater
Oh,
School.
cool. Got it. Got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there were projects that we were all doing at the National Theatre School, and so I ended up taking that show and I performed it in Montreal and I performed it in Toronto, that was that was the only theater I ended up doing. And now I'm feeling a real aching to go back and
Yeah.
get back on the stage.
Yeah, come down. Let's do a play together.
Oh
That's
my gosh, I
awesome.
would
Yeah.
love that. I
Yeah,
would love
yeah.
that so much.
Yeah. It's time we open those borders up. It's been a tough time for Canada. I'm so sorry about that. But
Yeah.
talk to me then, because I know for film incentives in Canada, it works a certain way with American productions where, like, obviously for some stars they hire, the American leads, and then they have to hire X amount, guest stars and reoccurring that are Canadian. Were you getting auditions for those projects, like any of the CW stuff? Because I could totally see you on Riverdale and things like that. Yeah.
I think I've had a handful of CW auditions, not too many.
Yeah.
But yes, that's exactly how it works. They have to meet their quotas,
Got it.
and which I also think gets a little bit frustrating for Canadian actors because, they want the big juicy
Yeah, and
roles,
they
right?
can't get it until
it's
they're
always the
American.
Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So messed up.
Yeah.
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 Hopefully that will
Yeah.
change soon. And was there ever, once you said Montreal and Toronto's where you did the one woman show?
Yeah.
Did you ever think about making that Vancouver leap?
No, I didn't, only because Toronto is also just, so rich in terms of its film and television landscape. And so and my family is here and my friends are
Yeah.
here. So I was never really tempted. I did also go to Vancouver. I was in school for 1 year at the University of Victoria, which is on the island there.
Yeah.
And so I did spend a little bit of time in BC, which is just probably the most beautiful province in Canada. It's stunning.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's not really known internationally as like a travel destination, really. People want to go to Europe or Asia or South America, but BC is really, really special.
Yeah.
But it does rain a lot.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that was really tough for me. I couldn't handle the rain.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to handle that either. Yeah, but that's amazing. And I'm so curious then, talk to me about, once you got in these incredible credits and you were doing your thing, how did the Mysterious Benedict Society come your way? Did you know the novel?
No, I didn't. I wasn't familiar with it, but I went to do pilot season in LA.
Okay.
And it was just one of the projects that I happened to audition for, and it was right before the world changed as we knew it.
So this was like right before March 2020.
Yeah, it was. I think at the beginning of March 2020, and
Wow.
I had
Just the audition itself.
Yeah, it was around then, or the callback was around then. Yeah, and so I did the audition, didn't hear, and I called my mom, and I was like, I think I'm going to come back home. I think I'm like done. I was starting to feel a little bit burnt out. And
this was before the global call of like everyone needs to go home.
All of that.
Okay,
yeah, it was like days before. And
Yeah.
I said I want to come home. And mom was like, no, just stick it out. Just stay. And I was like, no. I think I'm done. So I booked a ticket for the next day or the day after, and I went home. And within just a few days, that whole call to come home happened, and also the call from Mysterious Benedict Society came in to say, hey, do you want to do this?
That's awesome. But then there must have been the huge question mark of like, when are we going to do it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Are we going to do it? Are we even going to do it? It was like my biggest job so far, and all of a sudden there's
many more coming. I promise you that. But
that's very kind. Thank you.
so when you got it, I mean, I imagine obviously you're elated, but you're like, well, how's this ever? Because nobody knew when or if we'd ever be back. It was so scary.
Exactly. Luckily, I had all that preparation earlier in life from not getting any work and just waiting around all the time.
I'm in it now. I get it.
I was like, yes, this is what I know how to do. Wait.
Yeah.
So we ended up waiting for a few months, and then finally they said, yeah, we're shooting. We're doing it in BC. This is happening.
And following the probably strictest of protocols.
Yeah, super strict protocols.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Just because watching the show, I would never guess that, because you have extras and the sets are so big, and that's incredible that you pull that off. Talk to me about, it's so amazing to book something, but it must be kind of harrowing to shoot in such a dark time. How do you not let that affect the work?
You know what? In retrospect, it ended up being the perfect project for the time, because it was, so light, so funny. We're working with children who
Yeah.
are the leads of the show. And I think we kind of were able to escape a little bit in a certain sense, and delve into this, incredibly, exactly what you said, like Wes Anderson-y,
Yeah.
typical Roald Dahl world, of fun. And
Yeah.
I think it ended up kind of being the perfect job at the time. And the things that were lacking were just what I think what every set had to grapple with. Actors not really being able to hang out with each other, get to know each
Yeah.
other, which
So
it sounds like it's just for fun, but really it helps you so much on set to be able to have those personal
yeah,
connections
shorthand.
off
You
of
you
set.
need that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was a little bit amiss, but it turned out beautifully, and we're so proud of the project.
And I mean, obviously, it's so beautiful you got to work, but because you didn't get those chances to interact in the way that we normally would as creatives on a set, not just cast, but cast and crew, what did you do to occupy your time and to keep yourself sane during this massive period of isolation?
So luckily, BC is incredible in terms of green space. And so, you can be there and be isolated
Yeah.
and not come into contact with anyone, but also do these incredible hikes and, incredible drives. So I really, really immersed myself, I guess, in the landscape of British Columbia.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
so you did a lot of hiking and outdoor because I hear you're into fitness. I am as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's this one day where I was driving back from there are a couple of meditation camps there in BC as well. So I was driving back from a meditation camp, and I saw a sign on the side of the road that said something lake, and I was like, okay, well, probably it's a lake. So I pulled over, and I journeyed on this huge hike to get to this lake, which was completely isolated, like pristine.
Alone?
Yeah, by myself,
That's
and
scary, dude. Be
I
careful.
didn't realize at the time
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm from Toronto. And
yeah.
so I all of a sudden I was surrounded by these mountains, and it was just the most gorgeous picturesque thing. And it was on my birthday. And then I came back down, and I was so thrilled and elated. And then I read the sign that said bears and cougars beware.
Oh,
And that was my last hike. Then I was like, I'm not doing anything else
yeah.
by myself.
Disney would be very upset. That's amazing. I love that. And I'm curious, obviously like, I don't want to say this film was like the one film that did it, but something like, The Big Sick, with Kumail's film and that, now he's doing like Marvel leads, do you feel like now representation is at a place where you can be seen for like, it's not limited in the way that we were talking about earlier.
It's certainly changing. It's changing. And it's I think that there's a sense of hope in actors of color that things are moving towards where they need to be. There's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Very often you kind of see in shows or films, or even on agent rosters, you see
Yeah.
you're one of each kind of ticked
Yeah.
off, and I think we need to kind of push beyond that and say we want whole people, we want to play
Yeah.
complete human beings. And I think it shouldn't matter that it was actually a funny thing, because I was having this conversation about a show that I was watching, and we were talking about, I think there was one Indian person on the show, and we were just talking about the fact that how cool would it be if we saw 3 Indian people in leads
Yeah.
on the show, and that just happened to be because it happens to be the case,
Yeah.
and that it's nothing more than that.
Yeah.
And that really depicts, what our world looks like. And I remember watching a show years ago from the UK, and one of the leads was African American. It was a man, and he had a bald head. And there's a scene where he's hanging out with his friends, and his friends, yes, it was a multicultural group, but I think 3 of the other guys were also African American men with bald heads. And I was like, oh wow, like that looks normal,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it doesn't look contrived the way that, film and television often can look so
Like a
contrived of
Gap
trying.
commercial, Yeah.
Exactly, trying
Yeah.
to put these
Yeah.
pieces together.
Yeah.
That was the first
No
time I
disrespect,
went.
Gap. Don't sue me. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome. I love that.
yeah. So I
And
want to see
then
more of that. I think that's
yeah,
really important. Yeah,
fully. Yeah, I'm Hispanic, even though I don't look it. But
yeah.
that's awesome. So then, how long of a shoot was that for your show?
For our show, we did. I think it was about 6 months overall.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So that kept you, busy in a way where you weren't locked in a room, that so many of us were. That's so beautiful. And then coming home, has it
Yeah.
been cool, now for your family to see you in this incredible Disney show? I mean, they must be over the moon.
I called my dad yesterday and I said, "Dad, did you see my show yet?" And he goes, is it the one on Apple?" I'm like, "Dad, the Disney show."
Yeah.
Like, I sent you the login information. You literally have no excuse.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." He's like, "Okay." He's like, "I'll watch it today." He's like, "But if I don't watch it today, I'll watch it tomorrow." I'm like, "Okay, cool." My dad,
Parents.
he's just like, he's the most supportive person, but is also, not one of those people who's just like super focused on,
Yeah.
what's on TV or what the latest movie is. He's
Yeah.
not that into, pop culture in that way. So with him, he
That's cool.
always
Then
takes
you
a
can
little
bring
bit of
him as
time.
your +1 to premieres, and he's gonna be like, "Who's that?" It's a
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's so radical. That's awesome. Well, I love it, and I'm so proud of you. And you're amazing in that show. And
Thank
what's
you.
next for you? Do you have, I mean, I know we're just coming up for air, and you guys are still, in a really tough spot. But do you? I imagine you have no shortage of emails coming in. I don't know if you can reveal if there's a season 2 or not, but
I don't know yet. I don't know
yeah.
if there's a season 2 yet.
Well, I'm sure there
Hopefully
will
there
be.
will
It's
be.
it's a really great show, and
Thank you.
I'm honestly, like, I'm not usually a children's show guy, but I thought it was beautiful and it was really well done, and
Yeah, it's a
you're
lot of
awesome.
fun.
And
Yeah, thank you so much.
so talk to me. What's next for you?
So I've been working on a project, but I'm not able to talk about it yet.
Well, then that I think, Gia, that means you're just gonna have to come back then.
I would love to.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
love to.
Well, then two final questions for you.
Yeah.
One we sort of answered, but you know, if you could go back to the young, Gia, and you that was in that, kind of rolling around on the floors, and maybe didn't get the theater auditions right out of school, and was, I don't, the show's called An Actor Despairs. I don't want to say despairing, but feeling down and out, and that period of not working after the Moth Diaries. Any words of wisdom for the actors listening out there?
I think what we kind of touched on that was key for me was finding a life outside of this.
Yeah.
And getting satisfaction and feeling fulfilled from other parts of your life. And it doesn't mean going and having another career. It just means for me it was meditation and traveling around the world and being with friends, and that's also always going to just feed your work as well. So not doing it as a means to an end, but doing it for the sake of really trying to find fulfillment and happiness.
Totally. And my second and final question is, we live in a time now where it is very easy to make content, and there's not like a stat, but I'm sure there's more actors pursuing this now than ever because of Instagram, and it just feels so attainable, creating your own one woman show and doing those things. Do you think that you would recommend for actors out there listening to stop waiting for that agent to give them a chance or that audition to come their way?
100%. I think it's so important. I'm aching to see writers come onto the scene with life experiences that we haven't seen, stories that aren't being told, because there's just so much out there that needs to be talked about, and the beautiful colors of the world that you see when you go and you experience life. Like, I want to see all of that on screen. And just because you haven't seen it done yet, you haven't seen it in front of you yet, that doesn't mean, you know, that there's any less reason that you won't be able to share that part of you or that side of you. And it's so important.
Thanks for sharing that. It's so beautiful. And I know we're only just meeting, but I'm so proud of you, and way to go.
Thanks, Ryan.
And you come back on for this secretive project, because now I'm so curious, and I got so much love for you, and please stay in touch. And if you're ever in New York, look me up, and we'll do round 2 soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been
All right.
such a pleasure.
So much love. Okay. To the future. It's going to be
Right
bright.
back to you. Thank you.
Okay.